Hello, folks. How are we doing? So, after that quick short break, I'm delighted to be joined by two other amazing people who are innovators in this space of blockchain. I'm delighted by my good friend Tony Pearce and Sebastien Borget, who's involved in Sandbox. I'll start with Tony because obviously this is where I got my first taste of what blockchain was all about, thanks to you, Tony, where you got me involved in looking at the wonders of how we could put guns on the blockchain, not real guns, game guns. And it was amazing, fun to try and work out how to design a token before there was even a NFT standard. But I'm talking too much. Do you want to tell the audience about who you are, what you do, and paint a little picture about what you do with NFTs?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Oscar. Yeah, so, Tony Pearce, I go back 25, 30 years in games. So started back in Sega, Nintendo, then very early PlayStation 1, which I think is when we kind of started to cross paths, Oscar. And then had my own mobile games company, and then moved into social gaming on Facebook. And then in 2017, I was really interested in what the blockchain could do with regards to tokenizing in-game items and allowing users of my game to own in-game items or own the items that they use in our game. And I think that thought already is an amazing game changer, because if you look at the way the games market works now, 99% of games are free to play. There's no cost to play them, and a games company will make money by selling an in-game item. And if you take Fortnite as an example, Fortnite is free to play, but last year they made $4 billion selling in-game items, shirts for your avatars, new swords, new weapons, and yet the player actually doesn't own anything. They just have a license to use that item inside that game. They can't take it out when they finished and use it in another game. They can't take it out and sell it to their friends. And this is kind of bizarre when you've actually paid money for it. You own it, but you don't. So the reason being is these games lock you in, and the items themselves are logged on a centralized database. It's a database that the game owned. What the blockchain did, and what really excited us, was the fact that you could tokenize these items and log them on a decentralized database, which means that when you bought them, actually they came out of my game and they were in your wallet. And that was a real game changer for us. And we had a game at the time that we were building called Reality Clash, which is an augmented reality combat game. So think Pokemon Go meets Call of Duty. You go outside and you go into AR combat with your friends and you defend the park and stuff. And we thought about offering limited edition skins for these guns, which were bought outside the App Store, and they were tokenized, and that became NFTs. So the word NFT didn't even exist when we were doing it. Yep. So it was really groundbreaking and something that really excited us in just a whole new mechanic and a whole new gameplay. And 4 years on since then, I spent 2.5 years trying to tell people what an NFT was, with them going, I have no idea what you're talking about. And now, Seb and I are the most popular people in the world, right? So
exactly.
It's taken that time to get to where we are. And this year's just been incredible. And I think what NFTs and tokenization and metaverses are now bringing to games is the biggest jump I've ever seen. And I've gone through many different platforms.
Yeah, no, completely. And also, and again, Seb, you and I go back years as well. But I remember when you first showed me the Sandbox, which was a really charming 2D kind of physicsy kind of game. And then that has completely transformed into this blockchain superstar kind of principle where you're locking in the creative talent of the value of the creator is locked into your process, as much as Tony is creating value for the player. You're also looking at creating value for the creator in that process. Do you want to tell people a little bit more about what you guys are doing and where that fits in, and same all the way to Tony?
Absolutely. Well, really excited to be here after so many years. We've been trailblazer. We've been the pioneers in the space. We've been going through up and downs. I like to remember our background. And like you said, we've been more than 10 years into gaming. That's myself. I've been an entrepreneur. I co-founded 3 other companies before, 2 of them been acquired. Always in the space of new technologies, peer-to-peer, BitTorrent initially, then online media streaming in the cloud, mobile free-to-play, one of the first studios that enables turning players into creators and involving IPs and brands. And finally, the past 3 years, creating Sandbox, open metaverse built on blockchain. And it's been quite a natural evolution for us. It really came through an actual need, an actual frustration that, yes, we were able to turn players into creators, and we've been doing pretty well that since we had more than 40 million installs by then, 70 million creation. But we also came out to some sort of frustration, like people were spending time, they were putting a lot of effort, of sweat, of energy to creating the content that brought in more users, that brought in more revenue to the company. And all that revenue was actually locked in the company. We had literally no way to share revenue, to pay at scale those users who contributed to the success of the company, ultimately to it being acquired by Animoca Brands in 2018. So when we saw the first NFTs, we immediately had this sparkle and found what if we just allowed anyone to make an NFT, not just game studio, professional developer? Then they would own the content they create. They would be able to sell it on marketplace. They would be able to monetize it the way they want. And because they own it into a wallet, they could transfer it, use it in other place, and through interoperability, etc. And that's something that's resonated as well, and has been this disruptive, transformative moment when we move into fully Web3 and going beyond designing from the ground up a new version of Sandbox that would be leveraging from the very beginning NFTs, making sure players and creators would be owning all the assets they would make, the virtual land where they would publish the experience, and the token that they will use for the platform to pay or govern that world, as well as their avatar, their identity into that world. And there was no other way we could start with this rather than trying to apply it to existing games. So we've been hitting some sort of friction for a long time. People were thinking why couldn't existing platform just do this? And said, well, you cannot do this when you didn't put in place the right incentive, or you do not have the right motivation from the beginning to really empower the players and give back not just a small portion of the revenue or value generated, but give it fully back, 100% back to the users, the value. And that's, and now we are talking about open metaverse, open economy, and we're seeing at scale what happens when millions of users are engaging on a daily basis with products like Axie Infinity, like Sandbox, and other games. How it's been pushing forward and creating more opportunity that's been delivering positive impact around the world.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think what's interesting to me is watching how you've got these massive land sales that go so quickly, but then it's not just about that. It's also, virtual land, obviously, but it's also that the gaming experiences themselves are then having their own revenue models and so on and so forth to build into that. And I think that kind of layered approach is really, really fascinating personally. Let's go back to Tony. So Tony, obviously you've done a number of things in this space. I think it's probably worth talking a little bit about what you've done with Doctor Who and what you've done with Floyd Merriweather, but also I think probably also referencing the fact that I think Reality Clash is still the only blockchain supporting game that's approved on the App Store. Is that still correct?
Yeah, so we were one of the first that took the idea of tokenizing in-game assets to Apple. As I say, before the word NFT existed, and we explained this process, and we came up with the way that they would make a revenue share. even though someone was buying an item outside the App Store, when you downloaded it into the game, you had to unlock it, and you had to unlock it by buying an in-app purchase. So that's how the NFT got used. And we're selling, the trading of the guns. You're almost becoming a digital art or a digital gun dealer, basically, but with really cool skins. So the game is just it's a fun part, and the trading and the whole marketplace of it is great fun. And it's that platform that runs that game, and that marketplace is what we've been developing in parallel. So we now create storefronts where games companies can license our platform and sell their NFTs. And you can buy these NFTs, with a credit card, with PayPal, with crypto. We've tried to make it as user-friendly as possible. And, listening to your panel before, one of the issues that still people have is, adding in MetaMask and some of the confusion that goes with it. We've come at this with, how do we make this mass market and simple? And working with the BBC and Doctor Who as a brand is the first platform and site where you can go on and buy NFTs without even knowing they're NFTs. You are buying a unique digital trading card, because it's a card game that uses Doctor Who characters. And guess what? You can trade them. And if you dig into the FAQs, you might realize that it's an NFT and they're stored on the blockchain. But the last thing we want to do is confuse the audience. We want to bring it mass market, buy with any currency, trade them on a marketplace that we've created. And then if you make a profit, if you just happen to have a really cool card and you sell it and make a profit, you can cash out and we pay you back in PayPal. So it's super simple. Now, if you want to take it off our platform to OpenSea or to a secondary market, that's when you kind of now need to start thinking about a different chains. So we offer you Polygon, the Ethereum chain, and you decide what gas fee you want to pay. You put your wallet address in, and off it goes to OpenSea. And it's at that point you might need some kind of knowledge. But before then, it's a really cool digital trading card game and you own the cards. I mean,
in fact, that was one of the questions I was going to talk about, was the usability is one of those things I think is still an issue. But I think the way you've just framed it is, I think, very much into this, to me, what I think is the difference between a play to earn and a player who has earned something. A player enjoys a game. They don't have to have a level of knowledge to know how to convert that. But if somebody has that level of knowledge and wants to speculate on some of those elements, they can do so. And I think that supporting that kind of a mindset, that balanced mindset, to me feels safer for everyday players, but also still offers the opportunity to speculate. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, it's what's quite interesting going from traditional games, console games, into blockchain games, is that there's a couple of key things. One is the way that games companies, blockchain games companies release games is very different to console. What tends to happen is the company will sell the in-game assets before the game comes out, which is quite bizarre, right? And they do it for two reasons. One is they want to build a community. So people are buying these assets and can't wait to use them. And if they're limited edition, they buy them quickly before they sell out. And that gets people talking, and there's this FOMO because they might run out at a certain point. And it's also a great way for the games company to tell if it's going to be a success. And sometimes selling the in-game items can go on to fund the game, right? So it's a really interesting way of launching. And in fact, Doctor Who is a classic example. The actual trading card game, so it's like Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering. If you've ever played a digital card game, it's like that, except every card's an NFT. We've been selling packs of cards since sort of Easter, and the game actually doesn't come out until Q1 next year. And people are buying these cards. We've sold over 1 million cards, and there is no game, right, until next year. People are buying these cards because they're either collectors and they just love it, or they're buying them because they're getting ready for the game. So they're literally building their decks up, or they're hoping that they get a really cool rare card and they're trading them. And it's incredible seeing what's going on in the background. And the community is now just tens of thousands of people that are now dying to play the game, and it's getting bigger. And so you're building this fantastic sort of marketing pre-launch basically. So it's a different way of launching.
No, exactly. So, Seb, I saw you nodding furiously a few moments back there, particularly when we were talking about the simplicity and the usability of that process. I think the one particular moment I noticed you nodding most furiously was when you talked about where people don't even know there's blockchain there. I mean, do you take that same mindset, or do you have a different view in terms of how the usability should function?
I would say we're taking like a phased approach to the matter. Like, we believe like there's still a large opportunity to grow the overall audience that could enter blockchain-based gaming. Web3 is, so just to roughly speaking, there's now about 25 million MetaMask wallets, and I would say around 100 to 200 million wallets overall in the world, which is still a tiny portion of the overall gamer population or world population. Gamer population is about 2 billion people. I believe that Sandbox as a product, as a platform that encompasses multi-type of experience, has that strength to attract at scale many users who will be attracted for the fun, who will be attracted for the IPs, for the brand, for the play to earn aspect, for staking aspect, for lands, for many other aspects. And we've demonstrated so far, now we are more than 1.2, 1.3 million registered wallets, half of them created for the first time, that we can bring more and more people to be educated about Web3. And that education, and the friction of the UX is still there. It's much better than in 2019. It's still there though. But that education, I believe, is still important. That's what makes a Web3 application different from Web2. It's what makes people realize that they own this asset and what they can be doing beyond. You will often hear people like, you have to fall down the rabbit hole of NFTs and crypto to start really encompassing the power of like owning an NFT, using it somewhere else, taking it here, participating and engaging into the broader ecosystem. And so far, it's a recipe that seems to be working. Like in 2018, people were adopting. In 2019, again, 2020, DeFi raised, but there was not real other utilities and financial profit. 2021 is starting to show that we can educate millions of people from various backgrounds, not just traders or people who have high skill education. Looking at Axie again, like people from rural farming village, far remote in Philippines or Indonesia, are able to understand those principles. And we can be that driving force. Of course, there will be multiple approaches to the matter. Some games will be more focused on like, let's just focus on bridging and having more of like a middle ground solution and bringing traditional players into gaming, etc. But we think at Sandbox that if we want to position ourselves as the open metaverse, we need to disrupt what people have been used to in Web 2.0. We do not want to repeat those practices where we would be centralized information, collecting data about them, and they will feel it's the same environment than entering a Web3 app. It's a matter of culture, it's a matter of education, and it's a matter of like, how do we use technology to make an impact in the world and change some habits?
No, completely get all that. So let's go a little bit more detail. So obviously, as we talked about in the last session, there are some concerns that remain, particularly amongst indie game developers. Some are founded, some are not so founded. Things like volatility, things like fraud, things like scams, things like trust, I think is a factor. What do you have to say about those issues? I mean, do we have to do better? I mean, is there things that we can do inherently in the way blockchain operates? What do you think? Let's go with Tony.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, there's so many myths flying around with how bad NFTs are and everything. It really astounds me how little people actually do really understand what we're trying to do I mean, for instance, if you take Doctor Who, it all runs on our own sidechain, and most games now run on a sidechain. So when we mint an NFT, it's actually cheaper than a Visa transaction, right? There's no gas fees for the user. We are sustainability first, and especially working with the BBC, you can imagine that. When it goes back to mining for bitcoins and proof of work versus proof of stake, yes, one of that, that's energy. That's not good for the environment, but that's bitcoins. That's not minting NFTs, and that's changing pretty fast. We really are leading this market, and I think people read the bad press and really don't understand what the amount of investment we're putting into changing this. And then when it comes to scams, I mean, I remember when Steam came out, the amount of scams that was happening on that platform. I mean, it's just, if anything, blockchain is the most trackable system in the world, right? So I think you just hear the bad stories again and not the good ones.
I think the interesting thing for me is that, if we are building in a chain of custody, essentially, then if somebody creates an asset, then we know we should be able to get to the point where we can confirm that. And if somebody mints something which they don't own, the inherent value of that asset will diminish because it won't have the metadata to prove its authenticity. I would think. Is that fair, Tony?
Absolutely, yeah. As I say, I think we're getting better every day. And I think with any new market, people find a way of trying to get in there and scam you because you don't understand it. But the security now and the way that we work, it's really, really hard to be scammed on our platform.
And so, Seb, from your point of view, do you think that, Tony's right, that we're inherently improving dramatically, and the stories about blockchain are behind the arc of where we are as an industry?
I think there's still a lot of progress to be made to protect users. And it's true that when there is an opportunity to profit from like a weakness from a user, like unfortunately there are dark forces, people that are entering that. It's not specific to blockchain though. I was thinking like even with like touchless credit card, you can find people in subway station with the machine like cashing behind people's pockets. So it's just like, fortunately, like there's always bad side to certain technology and people trying to profit around them. That's probably why like regulation will start to enter at some point, and why like there are teams into decentralized ecosystem that are working to build more secure solution with various level of authentication or security that can be put in place around those. Ultimately, I think like there is still always this human factor mistake, and you will see among many communities, we've seen that almost every day happening now in the news, like, oh, I lost my my NFTs, etc., because I click on an offer that looked too good to be true. That existed back in Internet Web 1.0. Like people were, oh, you earn a free, a free iPod. You have just to put your mail address here, or like fake click banner. It's just a repetition of it, and you might be fooled once. You learn your lesson. Unfortunately, for some people, it's a pricey lesson. I think who hasn't fallen before for any sort of like we all have a weakness in that aspect. The goal is like how do we as a community work? Yeah.
I was just saying, I think what we're saying essentially is that blockchain isn't special. We have all the same human parameters to deal with as everything else. We still have a responsibility to our customers. We still have to build trust. We still have to pay attention to data privacy issues, all these other things, protecting children, et cetera, all still relevant. But at the end of the day, you know, their challenges are going to be something we face in an emerging market. So we're out of time, but I'm going to ask you just quickly. I'll start with Tony quickly. What's your one comment you would say about the practicality of doing games right now? What's the one thing people should pay attention to if they're looking at games and NFTs right now, Tony?
Build a really strong community. Get the fans behind you.
Perfect. Seb, for yourself, what's your one thing someone who's looking to do blockchain gaming should think about?
Keep educating through the Blockchain Game Alliance. Keep showing like great use case of this technology, and encourage people to not just stop at the first thing they read. Encourage people to learn and try by themselves to make a fully informed opinion and decision about it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I wanted to go into much more detail about things like the metaverse and how we were going to, you know, make all that work through blockchain and interoperability. My big topic that I love talking about is interoperability. I don't think we ever actually managed to get anyone else to use the guns in Reality Clash in another game, which is always the intent. But these things happen. Guys, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Hopefully the people in the audience have got a lot of value out of that. Again, as I said from my previous friends joining me with Mickey, with John and Dean, but also obviously with Tony and Seb. These are people who really have been at the forefront of this movement of blockchain games. They know more about it than anybody else on the planet, in my opinion. And I'm very delighted that they were willing to join me on this crazy panel. So thank you very much, guys.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Farewell. Thank you.
Tony.
So there we are, Tony,
Bye-bye.
Sebastien and Oscar.